muzvinafundo. Ana muzvinafundo vanoita zveclimate. Toitawo seiko isitatambura. Kana vanobora migodhi pamwe mukatiborerawo pamwe muchibhorani musingaone mfumo. Hapana. Takutodaso aiwa. Apa tichade solution yanhasi. Takutoda a long solution yekumberi yekuti atizode futi kuramba tichichema kana tachikira chitasika panyaya. Takutozviziva kuti tine dambudziko ratinaro. Ende dambudziko ratinaro ndiro rekuti mwaka yekunaya kwemvura yasiyana. Zuva rakupisa. Saka hatichazive. Totobvunzawo. Nasoro jena vanoita zveclimate. Muri munhu vana musina fundo veclimate. Saka tishwara musha wedu wongoparara. Naye vana musoro jena vanoita zveclimate. Tibatsireiwo isi kuno mvura ina kunaya. Mbesa dziri kudzakatsva, mombe dziri kupera, tiri kungotengesa. Tinoda kuziva kuti tinozoita sei mangwana kana zvinhu zvamira kudai. Saka tongoramba tichichema.
Tatozvivinga zvatatovinga kuti
avo vane magirazi vanenge vada kutibatsira.
Ndimana muzvina anasoro jena vanoita zveclimate. Muchiona tauya kudai sokudochema kwatiri kuita mombe dziri takungotengesa. Hatina kana mvura. Madhamu yedu akambenga akakura hana kana mvura ari kungoita madoko zvinhu zvichienda kudaro. Saka iko zvinotodii? Toita sei? Tibatsireiwo. Izvo iko zvino hatichada chikafu vakaita basa tiri kuchiona. Makaita kansera. Mababa ari kuuya kuti tingofanira. Zvaiko zvino akauya. Ko takuda kuti mangwana.
ndizvozvo.
Mune ramangwana redu todii? Toramba tisingochema nokuti mvura ichikunaya mwaka yakina iri kungochiwa. Takuda solution yekumberi. Nokuti ndo mararamira takuda todii naye anasoro jena veclimate isu hatichatapererwa. Tofa. Imi muchifunda mazuva ose nezveclimate yachona isi hatisingambozi. Musha woparara. Imi muripo. Ava soro jena vanenge
Hatisi hangu muzvinafundo asi nyaya yenyu kwedu yakamboitikawo manje.
tokuzva madii.
Chekutanga takaudza hurumende tiitire zvibhorani ikazviita. Chechipiri takaona kuti mombe dzinofa takaita zvembudzi. Mbudzi hadzidi mvura yakawanda semombe. Saka panyama tirikura kuti
Iwe wakanga wakaroora nembudziyo. Ungatomira vana vaMwari unokutanzi ine upfumi. Tinokuda masolution pano ndingamire vana vaMwari umeita zvine upfumi tira mbudzi. Kuda mombe dzangu. Kozvo ndakatendesa Bushman. Ndakatendesa Bushman. Oh, good Lord, save your children. I'm just going to save your the world of sorrow.
Thank you very much. Once again, now time has come forward, reporting back. But from what they were saying, I was thinking of this animal called best practices or comparative practices. So when CSOs are giving you research to do, like I do most of the time, they say you must find best practices from Europe, from America, Canada, and suggest how can we improve our system in institutions based on foreign laws. Have you really interrogated the applicability of these best practices? Canadian example, Canada did it. We can do it. Australia did it. We can do it. The Chief Justice called Zimbabwe. Gambia used to take an example in New Zealand, a case in New Zealand, to resolve a problem in Zimbabwe. One of the cases he took was the case of same-sex relationships. And another white guy, his Magnala, no, we cannot go to New Zealand. Let's start the Zimbabwean system to see whether they are at a time when they can accept same-sex relationships. So the issue of best practices, comparative perspectives, comparisons, be careful with what you are, what is best for who. No more practice or other practices may actually have to be rejected sometimes. I think I'm going to talk about ISAP. ISAP was the whole of Africa, isn't it? It began in West Africa as well, Southern Africa and stuff like that. So on the presentations, I would want the rapporteur, the person who is going to present, and the two lieutenants to come here, and then the other two to support the other guy. But the main presenter will be one altogether. So can we begin with cluster number 3? So there's no particular order. So I will just begin from anyone. That's democratic, isn't it? Cluster number 3, where are you guys? Is there a group that is not prepared? So group 5 is saying we want to start. So group 5, please, can you come forward? Where is it? Group 5, please come. This. No, 5. 5 minutes. Come forward. With 2 of your supporters or lieutenants. Make sure that on the gender side you are what? You are balanced. So you sit in the middle. Who are the other? Who are the
Yeah, we are finding all the balance. You can come.
I want to which leg is coming? Ladies? Charity? So, group 5. So, this is the socio-economic justice in public debt group. Their key points are domestic resource mobilization, environment, energy, climate and debt, and also procurement and investment. Thank you. So, you have 7 minutes. 7 minutes to present here. We will time it so that we go to lunch this time.
Good afternoon. Yeah, you need to listen carefully because we are going to share very important aspects of our lives. The aspect of social and economic justice is an extension of what Kule Joy talked about earlier on around debt and justice. And we have framed our conversation to say that when we talk about social and economic justice, we should frame our conversation around the implications of debt on human rights, specifically the achievement of social, economic, and cultural rights. So that's how we framed our conversation. And in that discussion, we noted that the people at risk of discrimination, they are disproportionately affected by debt overhang. And we concur fully with Kule Joy that we should have a comprehensive debt audit to address the debt challenge in our country. Because we still strongly feel that there are certain beneficiaries of the public debt that have the capacity to repay their own loan, especially in relation to the assumed debt, and in particular mobilization. And we feel that the need for financing development in our countries, especially within the framework of the financing sustainable development goals, we still have 3 fundamental questions that we should answer in as far as domestic resource mobilization is concerned. The first one is where and how do we raise resources? Where and how do we raise resources? How and in what form? And how should it be used? How should it be used? And that's where the issue lies. So we can either raise resources domestically, attract investment, or the other forms that we can have. But over and above that, as long as you have a deficit, a budget deficit, we have no option but to borrow. And of course, like what Petronella said earlier, it is not bad to borrow. Is it bad? It's not bad. It's an alternative. And our key recommendations around domestic resource mobilization, please pay attention. Pay attention, please. The first recommendation is that the government should come up with a framework for promoting DRM by expanding the tax base. And by expanding the tax base, we are proposing taxing the rich, introduction of a wealth tax, and also optimizing our tax incentives to avoid a race to the bottom. So we need to deal away with most of the harmful tax incentives, including tax holidays that we still offer. Then we also talked about taxing the informal sector, which in our view is a bit controversial. But by the informal, we're actually talking about those that are disguised as informal, but largely they are not informal. So we need to find a way of formalizing them and start taxing them. Then we also talked about, linked to the issue of promoting domestic resource mobilization, is the need to be deliberate in terms of combating illicit financial flows, so that we control the leakages, either in the form of corruption, tax evasion, avoidance, and money laundering. Then the second issue is about reforming the global financial architecture to ensure that the source countries benefit more from economic activities that take place in their jurisdictions. It's a global conversation, and the fact that the debt discussion is involving our bilateral partners, I think it's a conversation that we should also have within the global framework for debt resolution in our country. Please clap hands for me. That's the first set of recommendations under DRM. Then we also had a conversation around the environment, natural resource governance, and climate. And we felt that when governments are in debt, especially debt distress, some of their decisions, they want to extract as much resources as they can, natural resources, for purposes of generating income and either repay the debt. And in the process, they have no regard for environmental protection. So that is our entry point on that. Then the second issue is that increased debt vulnerability also increases, it reduces economic reliance and increases costs associated with climate-related natural disasters. And our recommendations is that we need to integrate environmental and climate considerations in debt contraction and debt management by way of either conducting environmental and climate risk assessments to inform our contractual and debt management processes. Then the second one is to strengthen institutions and policies for sustainable natural resource management by ensuring that all the processes are transparent transparent and institutions accountable, and broadly encourage community participation. Remember, we're talking about social economic justice and debt. So the role of citizens in either debt contraction, in natural resource governance remains very key, and issues to do with free, prior and informed consent and social license to operate for extractive companies remains very key. Our last submission in relation to procurement and investment. Our conversation was against a background of debt that we've contracted, resources. When you borrow and possibly raise resources domestically, the money goes into a consolidated revenue fund. And once the money is in the consolidated revenue fund, you don't determine that the money from this should go towards that. And most of the inefficiencies that we have around public procurement is exposed by the Auditor General. So there is poor management of contracts. Some of the contracts are overpriced, and sometimes we have inefficiencies in terms of the procurement that we do. And most of the procurement that we do also is outside the Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act in terms of competitive bidding, fairness, and value for money. And the investment that is financed through borrowing sometimes fails to achieve its own intended outcomes, both in terms of general procurement and also the contracting of the debt, including investments. The recommendations that we suggested, the first one is around e-procurement. And we do understand that PRAS have already started the journey on e-procurement by coming up with a framework. So our emphasis is on implementation and enforcement to ensure that we deal with procurement-related corruption. And then the other issues about ensuring that there is constitutionalism in the rule of law, especially as it relates to why we should borrow, is provided for in our Constitution and the Public Debt Act, such that we prioritize investments, especially in strategic projects that generate economic returns and ensure sustainable development. Not just economic development, but sustainable development in its three forms, which is economic, social, and protection of the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there any additions or support or solidarity messages from the group? Or you are happy?
No, thank you, Mr. Chikum, for the presentation. So in short, we are saying debt must be managed in a way that prioritizes socio-economic justice and equity. CSOs play a vital role in advocating for transparency, accountability, and people-centered debt relief solutions.
Thank you. You are good. Thanks. Okay, let's give them a round of applause, please. Thank you. Beatrice?
Sure. No questions for us, please.
No questions? The next group is group 4. It's group 4? Yes. Let's clap them to the podium.
For group 4, their name, what is your name? What's the cluster's name? Informal economies, right? Informalization of Zimbabwe's economy. Why do we criminalize the informal sector? It's a colonial mentality. You can't hustle in Zimbabwe. We need formalization. That's what Chitambara said. Yes, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Doc. Good afternoon, colleagues. And with me, On my right is Eddie Kabodoko, and Mam Mandshora from Biset and from Zichia. Those who don't know me, my name is Michael Ndiwen from Bulawayo Vendors and Traders Association. So we were looking at locating the informal economy in the domestic resource mobilization. I'll start by saying that we all know that the biggest employer in Zimbabwe is the informal economy. And as a result, the government, from our assessment and also empirical data that is available, we are supposed to be the cash cow. There is money in the informal economy, so therefore, we are the target for mobilizing resources, maybe to fund capital projects and also perhaps to repay the debt in the country. And I think if you go back about 8 months back, around January this year, the government introduced a regime, a tax regime, where they were targeting the informal economy to at least have a tax certificate for them to access products from suppliers. And there were about 9 issues that we're supposed to comply with for us to get the goods. But underpinning that decision was to collect money from the informal economy actors, so that then the government is liquid and is able to fund its various projects, and perhaps including repaying of the debt. And we want to also say that we are in business, we are not charity cases as informal economy actors. And we are not saying that we don't want to pay the tax, but we want a tax that also considers our needs. And the current tax regime as proposed does not address issues to do with access to social security. By and large here, maybe some of you are formally employed, you have access to medical aid through accessing to from various service providers. But our members don't have at all access when they are sick. Either they die or they find $20 for them to go and access medication, to consult, to pay a medical service provider. And we are saying, if the government then wants to collect money from us to domestically mobilize resources, it must provide an incentive, which is then developing models around access to social security, which is pension. I think you know that our actors don't have pension. When they are over 60 years, they can't go to the market. That's the end of their life. But predominant, some of you here were saying, I'm Dr. This, I'm employed by this particular industry or in this sector. You have pension when you get 60 or 65 years. You have something that you can actually lay your fingers on and survive. And we're saying, if the government is going to mobilize resources, it must incentivize the traders by providing or tailoring schemes such as access to some pension. They've tried models. In 2018, there was a model that the government introduced under SI 5th of 2018, the voluntary pension scheme, where you will contribute about $15. And we said that that was beyond the reach of the traders. And today we are saying, if the government is targeting us in 2024 to collect money through the regime that I spoke about, it must then tailor at least responsive, reasonable mechanism for people to access pension and medical aid. And this is in line with the ILO recommendation 204, which talks about formalization of the informal economy and ensuring that there's access to social security. But our government seemed to then looking at one aspect of the package, which is to collect money. The other component is provided by ILO, is they are not considering it. So our recommendation, our issue is that there has to be that incentive. Then we can happily pay if there's such schemes that covers access to social security. And then also the other issue, we have linked one area around issues of debt, which is high interest rates in banks, and this is juxtaposed with the financial inclusion for people in the informal economy. What we have seen is that the government has increased high interest rates so that banks can have more revenue and pay more tax, and part of that money then can be used to pay the debt. And we are saying the government has to ensure that high interest rates are a bit lower, so that it's not transferred to us, the consumers, who sometimes access microloans from these banks, because it was a burden also to us to repay the loans, where the government then onwardly then has to meet the debt obligation. And then the other subset of our discussion, we're looking at the environment, natural resources governance, climate change, and debt. And one of the key things that we also saw there was that the government also may want to target the small-scale miners and provide tax regimes since they are accessing a bit of various minerals. And what we're saying is that the government also has to, if it wants to get money from small-scale miners, it has to incentivize the formalization process and also the compliance. The cost of compliance is very high. So as a result, many of our actors don't then comply because there are no incentives. It's only about the government getting money, then not looking at other important issues around what is there for the small scale miner who is somewhere in Penalonga, who is somewhere in Kwanda, who is somewhere in other areas where you can find these various minerals. And then we also say that there is need that the government also ensures that the natural resources governance framework must also consider the environmental, social, and the economic impact of the extractivism, particularly looking at the recovery, reclamation, and also perhaps investing in social entrepreneurship. What we discussed was that the government then has a duty to respond to the impact of the extractive actors in terms of responding to health impact of the activities, perhaps environmental degradation. They have to put money to fix maybe access to medication, say procurement of medication for hospitals. Maybe someone, for example, in Shabane, they are sick from asbestos diseases that may affect lungs. The company that is extracting in Shabane does not pay anything to the community in terms of investment. So when there's an impact, like in some people are sick, the government has to bear the burden or the cost. So we're saying the companies must ensure that they invest in community, so that when there's impact, at least there is a duty that they play it in terms of plowing back to that community and dealing with the impact of its actions. And then we also say that there is need for periodic minerals resources audit. This will help to at least know who is mining and what quantities are they getting, and what actions are they carrying in terms of the mining process. But then the question was, how does the minerals audit then ensure that there is sanity in the mining, or if there are findings that are adverse, how do we act on them? And the debate was that, for instance, we have the OAG's audit report. Every year, same issues seem to be coming, but there is no action. So even if you do the minerals audit, we may have recommendations that are not acted upon. And then the last sub-theme was procurement and investment. We also said that we propose that local authorities must produce development plans specifically targeting either foreign or local investors, where they are obligated then to at least give or seed maybe a share towards local authority to develop the community, or to invest in maybe in public goods, or invest in some social enterprises. For example, people gave an idea of maybe investing in a solar farm where the community can access energy, and then excess energy can then be sold maybe to the private actors. So a company that is coming, say, to invest in Bulawayo, Bulawayo City Council has a developmental plan specifically targeting the investor to say you are committing this particular percentage towards local development, a project that is going to support the community. And then if there is, for example, the example that they gave, if it's about power, excess power then can be sold to the community. And then also the other issue that came strongly was on procurement, that there is need for transparency and accountability in procurement processes at various government agencies. And then also there is need to ensure that contracts are enforced. There were examples that were given where people paid 100% of the invoice, but then they don't deliver, or they deliver maybe less than 2% of what they're supposed to deliver, and nothing is being done. So the group said there's need to ensure that there is enforcement of contracts. But also the other aspect that the group came up with was that some government agencies and MTAs do not have the capacity even to carry out proper accounting systems. So there is need also for capacity building around accounting systems, adopting technology to account, or e-governance, so to speak. And then also the other issue was around investment was to promote private sector investment in the economy, and this will increase government revenues. But the flip side also was to then look at that we promote labor. Otherwise, people will be given very, say, legally wages and then be exploited at the expense of the private actors paying more taxes to government. So that kind of a balance also is needed. I would say these are the points that we came up from the group. Maybe Eddie, maybe Mom, I'm sure I want to add some things. Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I think you really touched the key components or key inputs which we are discussing under this cluster, informal economy and debt. I just wanted also to buttress the issue of formalization. As we all know, I think we all know that Zimbabwe have grown to be the second largest informal economy in the world after Bolivia. And at some platforms, the former minister, Chinamasa, once remarked that there's a lot of money circulating in the informal economy, but untapped. So for me, informal economy is an important key stakeholder, actually, in terms of debt, domestic debt mobilization, in the sense that, yes, we are talking that let's formalize the informal economy, which is the right way to do, but we need to appreciate that formalization of the informal economy, it's a process, it's not an event. So it's more of a transition from the informal economy to the formal economy. So when we are talking about taxing the informal economy, it's not the only component of formalization, like Michael said. There are a lot of elements which comprise the issues of formalization. It's a whole lot of a package. Issues of access to finance, issues of social protection, issues of market access, all those, you can name them. Issues of capacity building, so that they are able to sustain and grow their business and able to also to contribute to domestic debt mobilization. I think those were my little submission. Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon. As a group, I also want to add to say the informal economy, as of now, is the economy of the country. But now we are also contributing to the GDP through financing our kids. I think as Zimbabweans, kuna mwana akafa nenzara. We are having a lot of children in school, but their parents, they apply in the informal economy. They are not on the beam, most of them are not on the beam incentive, which means that the informal economy is playing a lot towards the debt repayment, because now we just have a few on the beam program. Why? Because most of them are being supported by the parents playing in the informal economy. So we are saying, as the government, they should support the informal economy to formalize by giving them incentives. The incentives are like, the money is very expensive for one from the informal economy to go and borrow money from the bank. The interest rates are very high. Why? Because today when Uncle Joe was presenting, he actually told us that the money, it's not free money, or we are being that the debt, the 21 billion, it's compounded, that there is the interest rate, and also there is a penalty. And what is happening, as I was assessing, is that that interest rate and the penalty is offloaded to us, the ordinary people, because wherever we go, everything is very expensive. Even if I go to borrow money from the bank, the interest rates are very high. So we need to have cheap money so that we grow our businesses to formalize. We also need to see that the money is being plowed back, which we are paying by having a development of infrastructure where we work from. Most of us in the formal economy, we work from the open air, and we are running battles every day with the police, but at the end of the day, we are contributing to the GDP. To us, it's really a pain, which pains us every day to say, why can't the government consider us as people who are also contributing to the GDP? And we are saying also we want affordable raw materials. People in the informal economy, they are producing brilliant quality goods, but the raw materials are very high. So maybe if they consider that, formalization, there is a lot of money within the informal economy, but we cannot put our money in the bank. If I go to bank my money today, tomorrow I'm levied. If it's $50, tomorrow I go, they say, you are now having $20. The next day, there's nothing. So we keep our money under the pillow. So the government should actually look at those incentives so that we can be going back to where I used to say I leave my $50 in the bank. The next time I go there, it's now $60, not the other way around. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Manshora. So in the group with Professor Sevele from NAST, Ma'am Manshona, and Kapodogo, we said Unika Zimcode, Dr. Chaka from GZU and PRIS, and Dr. Bobo from OPC. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we give them a round of applause, please? Thank you very much for that. I will allow Kuzwai to take over.
So good afternoon to you all. Thank you for your participation and attention thus far. We will now be breaking for lunch from 1:30, and we should be back and seated at 2:30. Please do come back. The program is still continuing. Straight after lunch, we'll allow the remaining groups to present. And there's a communique that we're working on that we will work on together after lunch as well. After that, we will have some logistical arrangements, and I do understand there are goodie bags that you will receive that look something like this. So please do stay behind and come back after lunch. Lunch tickets are being handed out at either door, so we can use that exit or this exit. Gracia will be at one of the exits, and I understand that Unica will be at the other exit, and they will be giving out lunch tickets. So we can all head for lunch, and we'll meet back here at 2:30. Thank you.